In today's video, you'll see a small town ravaged by civil war and an island inhabited only by decrepit dolls. But first, let's look at this creepy church full of, I guess there's no better way to describe them, ghosts. Number 10. St. George's Church, Czech Republic. For over 5 years now, St. George's Church in the village of Lukova in the Czech Republic lay abandoned. The last event held in this 14th century church was in 1968, when a funeral service was in progress and the ceiling and part of the roof collapsed, sending everyone running outside. Locals took this accident for a bad omen and never ventured inside the church again. Then, in 2014, the abandoned church was chosen to be the location for an art installation. Artist Jakub Adrava thought the creepy, dilapidated vibe the church exudes was perfect for what he had in mind. And oh, how right he was. Adrava filled the church with more than a dozen life-sized hooded figures, which he made from plaster, which made the church look like a haven for wandering spirits. Quite predictably, the creepy exhibit gained widespread attention, and people from all over flocked to see the eerie sight. As visitors came, so did a steady stream of income from admission fees. Adrava has actually raised enough money to fix the old church's roof and to restore the entire building, thus preserving a very important part of local history. Number 9. Hashima Island, Japan. About 9 miles from the city of Nagasaki sits an abandoned island, void of inhabitants but steeped in history. Hashima Island, once a center for undersea coal mining, was a sharp representation of Japan's rich industrialization. The island has a unique outline similar to a battleship, hence it was also called Gunkanjima, or Battleship Island. It functioned as a coal facility from 1887 until 1974. But the island's dark history isn't limited to the soot produced by the tons of coal that was processed there. During World War II, Japanese wartime mobilization policies exploited enlisted Korean civilians and Chinese prisoners of war as forced laborers. Made to work under harsh conditions, it's estimated that over 1,000 workers died on the island between the 1930s and the end of the war as a result of unsafe working conditions, malnutrition, and exhaustion. When the mine shut down, Hashima Island went ignored for nearly 3 decades. Today, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site and is open for tours. However, despite the public's infatuation, the island's legacy remains an enigma. It's unclear whether the focal point of the island should revolve around its part in Japan's Industrial Revolution or as a reminder of the forced laborers who had to endure excruciating circumstances. Number 8. Bodie, California. Bodie, the most notorious ghost town in all of the US, was once a flourishing, albeit lawless town in California, a place where the fire bell ringing out the ages of those being laid to rest seemed never to stop its toll. Today, what's left of Bodie is an eerie shell of the rough and tumble gold rush town. Located in a very uniquely difficult climate of a desolate, high-altitude plateau in the mountains, but not in the woods, Bodie wasn't and still isn't a place for the faint of heart. By 1879, Bodie boasted a population of 10,000 and had 65 saloons, 50 mining companies, a thriving red light district in the north end of town, and the worst reputation in the state. But despite a less than favorable reputation, people from all over the country flocked to Bodie, all for the chance of striking it rich in gold and silver. But as the mines dried out, so did the miners. By 1888, Bodie's population was down to less than 100. Today, the windswept streets of Bodie are open to the public. It is the best preserved ghost town in California, with about 200 structures remaining. And although many of the building interiors still contain original artifacts, people are forbidden to enter them. Number 7. Humberstone, Chile. Northern Chile is dotted with ghost towns abandoned long ago, which are slowly falling to pieces in the harsh Atacama Desert. These towns were built around a mining industry that produced sodium nitrate, more commonly known as saltpeter, which was an important part of fertilizer production from the late 1800s. Almost all of these ghost towns can be explored by visitors. Chief among them is Humberstone. Humberstone was the largest of the nitrate towns. It was founded in 1872 and was originally called La Palma. During its heyday, it was called home by around 3,500 people, no doubt lured there by the chance to make it rich by mining white gold. Today, the house which used to belong to the miners, and the entire town for that matter, is completely empty. All of them perfectly preserved, thus making this creepy ghost town the perfect place for tourists. That is, if you don't mind the ghosts, as Humberstone is reportedly the most haunted place in all of Chile. Number 6. Belchite, Spain. The old Spanish town of Belchite once found itself on the front lines between 2 armies and 2 ideologies during the Spanish Civil War of 1936 to 39. and because of that, the town was laid to ruins and was subsequently abandoned by its residents. Many bloody battles took part in its now empty streets, battles which resulted in a lot of lost lives. These extremely violent deaths have led to the belief that many unrested souls of soldiers now call this abandoned town home. Today, Belchite looks largely as it did in 1939. Piles of rubble strewn about, the clock tower barely standing, Mudihar brick and archwork of some residences on display, the cathedral pockmarked with bullet holes and gouged by mortar shells. Number 5. Ross Island, India. For decades, the obscure Ross Island was the site of the brutalization of thousands of convicts and political prisoners amidst a luxurious British colonial settlement. After the Indian Mutiny of 1857, considered to be the first war of eventual Indian independence, British colonialists who were caught unawares by the rebellion immediately sought to establish a faraway penal settlement to subdue the rebels. And Ross Island seemed to be the perfect place to build this new settlement. For years, the inmates were forced to clear the island's impenetrable, humid forests to make way for an opulent colonial complex. They constructed everything from a luxurious commissioner's bungalow with carved gables and shaded verandas to a Presbyterian church fitted with stained glass window panels from Italy. Ross Island's colonial masters could entertain themselves in manicured gardens, tennis courts, and swimming pools. And in fact, no expense was spared in making Ross a comfortable haven. Today, the jungle has reclaimed the land of Ross Island, shrouding in foliage its gruesome past. Giant knots of ficus tree roots ensconce the dilapidated remains of opulent bungalows and have taken over a ballroom where couples once waltzed. Some 800 miles away from the coast of mainland India, the island in the Indian Ocean is now swaddled in eerie desolation and overgrown vegetation. Number 4. Michigan Central Station. Possibly the most photographed abandoned building in Detroit, the massive train station known as Michigan Central Station has stood empty now for more than 30 years. Once a popular and bustling business hub, the abandoned shell has become a symbol of Detroit's economic problems. The station was designed at the turn of the last century, part of the popular City Beautiful urban planning movement inspired by Chicago's 1894 World's Columbian Exposition and its romantic neoclassical white city. The movement focused on beautifying urban spaces and erecting monumental grand buildings, and was particularly prevalent in Detroit, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. For the first 20 years of its life, MCS was a source of civic pride and an elegant example of the growing city's potential. Hundreds of trains passed through the station each day at its peak before World War II. Beginning in the middle of the century, however, rail travel began to fall off. On January 5, 1988, the last train left the station, and the building began its second life as a symbol of the decline of Detroit, open to passers-by and looters until 1995 when a fence was finally erected. And with that, it's now time for today's best pick. Today's pick is probably the creepiest place in today's list. Not only does it have a long history pockmarked with death, it also is the only place that is reportedly so haunted, the government actually banned visitors from going there. Find out more about it next. Number 3. Poveglia Island, Italy. Poveglia Island is one of the 166 islets in the Venice Lagoon off the eastern coast of northern Italy. Although it has served various purposes, this place is well known for its macabre past. It was, first and foremost, a quarantine facility. Tens of thousands of dead and living Black Plague victims were brought here across centuries. And if you are one of the living to be brought here, never expect to leave the island dead or alive. Corpses piled up in pits were burned in large fires. In fact, it has been said that most of the sand on the island is actually ash from cremated human remains. But the island's dark history doesn't stop there. In later years, mentally ill patients in the institution suffered heinous tortures and experiments at the hands of a mad doctor, who he himself was said to have killed himself, tortured into madness by the spirits of his victims. Ah yes, the spirits that are said to torment any living person who venture into their island. Not only human spirits though. If the stories are to be believed, demons also haunt the place, lured there by the island's dark past and negative energies, and continue to torment the dead as they have suffered while they were still alive. Number 2. Cape Romano Dome Houses. Built in Florida in 1981 on 10,000 Island, which is south of Marco Island and only accessible via water, the ultra-modern dome house is a complex of stilted concrete igloos slowly being reclaimed by the sea. A number of legends have sprung up surrounding the origins of the crumbling cluster of domes at the tip of Cape Romano. Everything from a secret cult to aliens have been credited with creating the space-age buildings. But the truth is that the now empty concrete bubbles were born from the mind of retired oil producer Bob Lee. The firm beach on which the domes were built began to be overtaken by the sea, until the domes were surrounded on all sides by water. They only survived thanks to the concrete pillars elevating them above the water level. Number 1. The Island of the Dolls. Isla de las Muñecas, or Island of the Dolls, is the creepiest tourist destination in Xochimilco, Mexico, dedicated to the soul of a young girl who passed away at a tender age. The place is actually a floating garden, but instead of being filled with beautiful plant life, it is currently a home of hundreds of terrifying, mutilated dolls. Their severed limbs, decapitated heads, and blank eyes hung on trees, fences, and nearly every available surface. The dolls appear menacing even in the bright light of midday, but in the dark, they are particularly haunting. Legend has it that Don Julian Santana Barrera, caretaker and only inhabitant of the island, found the body of a little girl who drowned in one of the canals around the island. Try as he might, he wasn't able to revive the girl. Soon after, he saw a doll floating in the water near where he found the body. Thinking that it was the dead girl's doll, he took it and hung it on a nearby tree. See you guys next time.